I'm Sasha Stefanovic from Purdue Men's Basketball, and you're watching Brags in the Stands.
We're back, and so is basketball season. Let's go, Boiler Up.
The Bears, they started this new tradition last year where they celebrate their wins the correct way.
Waddle and Sylvie, ESPN 1000, don't miss it.
I know what you mean.
It's like their own Philly.
Okay. Okay, I think what it is.
We shouldn't be showing this. Am I crazy?
Yogi!
What a great sign that is. What have I told you? 17 minutes of rain would wash away 108 years of drought.
Do you see this team growing into the team that you were in 2005?
Yeah, it's like a great practice. everybody.
You are ridiculous.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are back here at Brags in the Stands. It's been a long time coming. I've been fairly busy here lately, as my co-host has been as well. Kraig Bowers alongside here from Boiler Diehards, a very popular Facebook page, and myself, of course, Gregory Braggs Jr. Appreciate you coming back, Kraig. It's been a minute, huh?
It's been a minute, and you've been busy with all the Chicago Bears stuff, and I've been the guy hounding you over and over of, hey, we need a Purdue preview show. So I'm really excited that we're finally back on here and get to talk a little bit of Purdue basketball.
Yeah, you've been scratching and clawing all offseason. Let's do a Purdue show. Let's do a Purdue show. But for those of you that don't know, I have started a new job in Chicago sports media with my guys over at CHGO. It's been very exciting. They cover the Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox, Bears, of course, the soccer team, Chicago Fire, and Red Stars. We do pre- and post-game shows. There I am alongside my guys, Mark Carmen and Adam Hogue. It's been a very thrilling experience for me. 4 or 5 years of working on this, as far as really putting in the work to try to get to this point, has been a lot of fun. I'm still no media by any means, but to sit alongside people that have been in the business a very long time. We have Corey Wooten on our team, former Chicago Bear. It's been a lot of fun. So I am very grateful for everything that CHGO has done for me. But enough about me. Today is about Purdue basketball. And of course, we got our guy, Bobby Riddell, joining us once again. Bobby, how grateful are you to know a celebrity such as myself? I'm sure you're very honored.
Totally honored and really impressed to see you big time with CHGO. That's really cool. I'm a big Cubs fan myself, so I listened to a lot of the CHGO Cubs podcast this past year. Even though the team struggled, I listened to that a lot. Those guys did a great job. So to see you join the Bears side of that crew is pretty cool.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I said, it's been fun. We're doing our thing over there. The Bears won last night, so that was a lot of fun. I was up till about 1, 2 in the morning getting back from the studios. We have a live studio in right by the United Center in downtown Chicago. So I'm going to send, as I thought I was going to do, to Matt Painter, the head coach of the Purdue Boilermakers, is our special guest for today, which is really exciting. We've had a lot of special guests, Bobby being our first, and now we've dragged him on so many shows here the last couple of years, Kraig and I, and last year we talked to so many former players and current, obviously Sasha Stefanovic is a friend of mine. So it was a lot of fun following his career with Purdue. Now that he's moved on, he's playing professionally in Greece, having a lot of fun out there, living the dream. And but even the former players, Chris Kramer and everybody else, like it's been one of these things that's kind of snowballed into something special here. And Bobby, we appreciate everything that you bring and help with us here at Brags in the Stand. So today is kind of a cherry on top of a lot of hard work we've been doing, in a great way to start this season with head coach Matt Painter coming on in just a few moments. Like I said, I'm going to send along the link to him and let him know we're ready for him. So Kraig, why don't you, while I'm doing that, give your overall thoughts, on the season, what you're looking forward to, or anything you got on the show.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously this headed into this season's a little bit different than last, right? I think last year we were a top 10 ranked team coming in. From the preseason AP poll, it looks like right now, I don't believe we are ranked right now at all. So I think obviously it's just a little bit different coming in, and we've got an inexperienced backcourt, really experienced front court. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes together. Several freshmen that are coming in onto the team, plus a transfer in David Jenkins Jr. So I think a lot of it this season is just going to be being really interested to see how that team gels together, what the freshmen bring to the table, what the transfer brings to the table, and how that team can come together and where they can perform, because I don't know that anybody from the outside right now that's not kind of embedded in that program has a real good sense of what the ceiling is for this team.
Yeah, and that's kind of the exciting part, right? They're starting from the ground. Obviously, Zach Edey's a dominant force, but there's a lot of unknown with this team, and that, it could be good or bad, but we're going to focus on the positive a lot of times here over at Braggs in the Stands. And, from what we saw in the scrimmage, and we'll get to a lot of that here with Coach Painter and maybe a little bit afterwards, there's some bright spots. I mean, these freshmen can play. They've got a lot of talent, and whether they're going to be ready or not, I guess is going to be the final answer. But Braden Smith, jumps off the page. However you want to say it. I mean, he's very electric. I think the better word is magnetic, because your eyes just are always on him. He does so much, and the thing that I like about him most, Bobby, is the first observation I made is he plays on his toes. And may sound simple, but watching as a Bulls fan, Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball, when he's healthy, they are very much guys that play on their toes, and they always seem to be one step ahead of their opponent because of that. And Braden seems to have that kind of ability. So, I like what I'm seeing from him. Obviously, Fletcher Lawyer had a good finish of the scrimmage as well. But what are your thoughts on what you've seen so far and at the scrimmage? I know you've probably seen a little bit more than just that open scrimmage that we saw.
Sure, yeah. I've seen a couple other practices, and I'm with you. I agree. I like a lot of what I've seen from both those guys. They both just have that natural feel for the game, which you obviously really like to see. Guys that just – they can read the game. They see passing lanes. They have good floor vision. I mean, both those guys are really good passers. Braden Smith probably, going to get even a little bit more recognition for his passing as a true point guard. But I think Fletcher Lawyer is a great passer in his own right. And what I love about Braden Smith is, and you kind of talked about it as far as just the way he plays, I like that even though he may not have quite the straight line speed of a guy like Jaden Ivey, who we had last year, he's still really, really quick and fast in his own right. And what I love is even when he's playing full speed, I feel like he still looks like he's under control. And that's a skill that not a lot of guys have, is to be able to play full speed, but still be under control and be able to make good decisions and see the floor. And so I think that's something that's going to be a real treat for Purdue fans to see, is a guy who is going to be able to push the tempo and still be a very good decision maker. He'll, of course, have some turnovers every now and then. All point guards do, because they have the ball in their hands a lot. Yep. But I think we're going to see him making the right decision more often than not.
Absolutely. So without further ado, I see in our backstage of our studio joining us none other than the head coach of the Purdue Boilermakers, Matt Painter. Really appreciate you carving out a little time for us here. Welcome to Braggs in the Stands.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. After listening to Bob right there for a couple minutes, you don't need me to be on.
Well, see, he's our bait and switch, right? When we brought Robbie Hummel on last year, and he had like 1 day out of 2 months to come on, and we were like, well, can you? He did it in the airport, so he's the guy that breaks the ice. We've had him on more than a few times here the last couple of years. I owe him like 4 Cubs games for these favors, but Bobby's become a friend of ours. I know he probably doesn't want to admit it to too many people, so we appreciate you joining us as well, Coach.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. I'll kick things off, and then I'll start doing the 3-man weave here with Kraig and Bobby. But the thing is, I'm the new guy here. These guys are Purdue lifers. As full disclosure, I changed sides, and we won't talk about the side I was at, but the day Sasha, committed to Purdue and you came out to Chesterton High School and gave him the offer, it was a very exciting time. He's a good friend of mine, and following his career with you, I've gained so much respect for you as a coach. Obviously, you've always had my respect, but just seeing the little details that you put into it, not trying to gas you up too much, Coach, but I think you're one of the best in the country, and I mean that. And watching his evolution and the team's evolution over the last 5 years to going to this team that's top 10 in the country last year was just unbelievable. I mean, you guys lost like maybe 6 games, and every team stormed the court. It was, to me, it was I wasn't expecting that, and it was a lot of fun. There was a lot of pressure with last year, but at the same time, it was awesome to see. And I'm sure for you, getting to that point in your program, I'm sure is very gratifying. So, where are you at now, going from that, and going from a young team to a team with expectations to going back to a team that may have to be the underdog and fight and scrap for every win they get?
Yeah, you're not. Sometimes you got to do some things differently, but you're still piecing a team together, and you got to keep getting better at doing that as a coach. A lot of people think it's the schematic approach, even though it's important. It's not always. It's finding the right mix. It's finding the right guys. It's having that trust. I think that's the word that you like all your players, but you don't always trust all your players. And when you can get to that mode, it's like, Sasha's a great example for us. He wasn't ready to play high major basketball when he got here. He just wasn't. But in 2 years, he was. And that's part of development. That's part of getting better. And that's part of seeing, somebody like himself, like right there is just a great example. People want to know about, like, how can a guy like that, bring value? Well, can you move and shoot through action? Like, he can shoot through action. He's just not someone who can stand still and make a shot. He can move and do that. He knew what was going on. He could have coached our team. And that's what you need. You need guys that know what they're doing. You need guys that you can trust. And I think our staff has done a very, very good job of piecing things together. Now, our experience level together is not very high. We have a 5th year in David Jenkins. We have 4 true freshmen. We have 2 freshmen that set out last year that were hurt. So we have 7 new pieces here, but we still have a handful of guys that have been in our program that have played. We have an All-American, Zach Edey. It's a great place to start. But back to what I was saying originally, you're still piecing a team together. You're still putting it together, and you don't do it through practice as much as you do it through recruiting. Like, you got to know what you're doing. So many people accumulate talent, and then they just go crazy and bark up the tree that you guys don't know how to play. You don't know how to play together, when that shouldn't have been a big part of the evaluation in the first place. Like, you have to find people that have a feel for the game. You have to find people that fit what you're going to do. If you don't, then you got to switch what you're doing. And we've really been able to get systematic in what we're doing from an offensive standpoint, and been very, very high on the efficiency side of things. So we're right back there with it. I heard Bob talking about a couple of our young guards that are, that are good players. And I think our fans are really going to like them. But they're still true freshmen. And, we're looking forward to both of those guys, impacting our team. But we have a great front line. I think Caleb First, Trey Kaufman, Mason Gillis. Obviously, I mentioned Zach. We have a really good front line. Now we got to be productive together. And you're kind of in that space here when you start practice. Everybody worked on their game. Everybody tried to add something. Everybody, and that's very normal, and that's productive. But to have a cohesive group, now you got to get down into role definition. And some of that stinks as a coach. It's just like somebody's worked on something and it's not quite there. And you got to tell them, like, hey, put this in the attic next to the baseball cards here for the next 6 months. We'll get to work on it in the spring. They don't like that, but that's a part of it. Like, I don't try to appease people when it comes to the betterment of our team. Like I've learned to be able to build a good relationship, but draw a hard line at times and say, this isn't what we need this year for our group. That, we need you to, we have a lot of guys that are dribbling too much right now. Then they look at you and say, I shouldn't dribble. It's like, well, when's the last time you dribbled and something constructive happened? It led to your field goal or somebody else's field goal or a hockey assist, whatever. They'd be like, well, what are you saying? Like, coach, what are you saying? I was like, well, the object of this game on offense is to get better shots than your opponent. And then defensively, it's to create, enough of a defense where they're getting tough shots. You get easier shots, they get tougher shots. You're going to win. The pizza's going to taste good. So but they've been in the mode of improving themselves, which is cool because you hope that can improve our team. But sometimes when they're trying to do a little bit too much and they're a guy that needs to stay in their, you want that, but we got to be dribbling to the rim and create some things and be under control and then be able to make that decision. And that's what gets lost a lot here. It gets lost that I can improve my skill level. So I'm constantly going to improve my game when you got to improve your decision making to improve your game. The decisions are what, help somebody get a good shot. The decisions not to do something keeps you in offense and doesn't give you a tough shot or a turnover. So I know I'm, talking, but it's it's an attribute that I have that I can take one question
and that's my problem too, Matt. Like I give, when I set this up with the question, my questions take 10 minutes and you've always been very detailed in your answers, and we appreciate the detail because the devil is in the details. You were having a little bit of internet issue, but you're back and it was pretty, we got it all as far as what you were saying, but I'll keep an eye on that. But Kraig, I'm going to let Kraig Bowers go next, and then we'll let Bobby go ahead. Fire away, my friend.
Yeah. First of all, just thanks for coming on, Coach. Sure appreciate it. You kind of hit on this a little bit, but, it would seem from the outside looking in that your front court is really well established, but there might be some inexperience in youth in the backcourt or some people that have come in, and David Jenkins Jr. that's just not as familiar with the program in general. What do you see the new guys bringing to the table in the backcourt? And is one of those guys going to kind of be the role of the shot creator, being able to get their own shot at the end of a shot clock when the offense isn't working or that type of thing?
Right. Well, obviously the two guys that return that have played, Ethan Morton and Brandon Newman, both of those guys, Brandon's going into his fourth year, as is Mason Gillis. Ethan's going into his third year. So when they get to that point in their careers, you expect more from them. You expect them to follow what you say, to really buy into it and sell what you're preaching, especially when you're not around. And so both of those guys will have a really good opportunity this year. He had mentioned Braden Smith and Fletcher Laurier. They both have very similar attributes. Both competitive, both can pass. Braden's more of a point. Fletch is more of a combo guard. But their ability to pass the basketball is really going to help us. And that's what you need. You have to get guys, that can move the basketball, that can run your stuff, that can knock down shots. We have a high skill level. So outside of Zach Edey, every person on our roster, I don't think I'm off here, either shot 40% from three last year or shot 40% from three in their last year of high school. So we've put together a group of guys that can really shoot the basketball. So our ability to probe the defense, whether that's in motion, whether that's in sets, whether that's in transition, is very, very important. I think we have a high, competitive spirit. I think David Jenkins is the guy that helps us with that. He plays hard. He's played in a lot of games. Cam Heidi and Brian Waddell. Cam is has been behind at 6'7" because he missed most of last year. He missed all the summer. He just sat out for about a week and a half with another injury, and now he's back playing. Brian missed all last year with an ACL and an MCL. He sprained his ankle a couple weeks. Yesterday was the first time he practiced some. So both of those guys, trying to figure, some things out and just get healthy and then get some reps and get out there. It's going to take a little bit of time here for them as Brian, just started playing. But I like all those guys. I don't think I missed anybody. If I did, I normally miss one person. It's like going to every time I go to the grocery, I always forget one thing. But
that's why I don't get sent to the grocery store.
Yeah. If you haven't noticed, I like my groceries. So
if I get sent to the grocery store, I come back, it looks like a third grader went to the grocery store. So
load that pantry up.
That's right. Bobby, go ahead, bud.
So those guys, kind of the overall view. Will Berg is a kid 7'2" kid that's going to redshirt for us. He hurt his hand the other day, so he'll be out for another 4, 5, 6 weeks. And so we have some depth along our front line. I feel good about that. Now just trying to get a cohesive group. I think, a lot of people are concerned because we don't have people that return at the point guard position. But David Jenkins, even though he's not a true point, has played a lot of quality minutes and done a lot of really good things out there. When you get guys like that, you just try to get them to their strengths, to the best. I want guys like that can shoot like that. I want them to put it up. I want them to take good shots, obviously, but I want him to play to his strengths. Braden is more of a quintessential point guard. I want him looking for a shot. I think anytime you can pass the way he can pass, if you're looking for your shot, it really makes things, a lot more fluid. Fletch is somebody that will put the ball in his hands, Ethan Morton, because they're good passers. But if they can't hold the defense as a threat offensively, then people just play them to pass, and then their value goes down in that area. So you got to be on the hunt. You got to be looking for your drives, your pull-ups, your quick threes, and then you got to be able to move the basketball. I think that's the one thing that we can be really good at this year is our ball movement and just our cohesiveness as a group.
Yeah, I was frustrated because I've got some good clips, but the best one I saw of the day was a possession on your end where you were sitting in the scrimmage where the ball was just moving around the horn, and Braden made like 2 very nice passes within that sequence, kickouts, and he has a lot of flair to his passes. And it was like basketball poetry on that particular possession. I didn't get it on tape, so I was frustrated with myself, but you can see how these guys are starting to gel into that. And I'm sure for you as a coach, just like for me as a bricklayer, sometimes we want a guy that doesn't know as much because then we can teach them our way, and I'm sure the same goes like when you get a young player, that's where you get to sink your teeth in and get them to buy into what you're trying to do and running the system. Bobby, go ahead, fire away, my friend.
Hey, Coach. Yeah, one thing that a lot of what with your program is still the same as far as when I played. Certainly, defensive end, a lot of those same principles still in place. Probably the biggest change I think that you've made to your program since I played from a schematic standpoint is just offensively how much set plays you guys run and how big the playbook is maybe compared to when I was playing.
Correct.
And some more motion offense when I played. And so last year when I was getting to be around the team more, I took a lot of excitement into trying to learn the playbook and some of the vernacular, and that was really interesting to me. As far as you'll hear, as far as an NFL comparison, you'll hear when there's like a new quarterback or a younger guy, you'll hear the coaches say they're scaling the playbook back a little bit. With you having so many new primary ball handlers this year, is that something where you've had a tough time trying to install everything as far as your playbook goes, or is this something where these guys have picked things up pretty quickly?
Yeah, not at all. I don't believe in that. I also think running set plays in high major basketball is a lot more simple than trying to dice secondaries in the NFL. Yeah, but nobody has been stumped in terms of the capacity to run all the things that we run because of the vernacular that we put it into. So I actually stole it from NFL films, and I just was like, man, he's in the huddle and he said 30 things. Like, how in the world can they know all that? Well, not everybody needs to know all that. They just need to know what they're supposed to do. Obviously, Tom Brady needs to know all that. The quarterback needs to know all that. For us, it's a lot more simple, but we run a lot of stuff, but everything has a meaning. So there's nothing being said out there where they have to remember the whole play outside for a handful of specials that we have. So that's what we've tried to do. like we don't run the same things when we lose Carson Edwards. Like we ran more plays to get him on the move, whereas we did more things with Jaden Ivey in transition to open things up. Even though we did run Jaden Ivey through that, he wasn't as much. We just open things up. You see how much space he has to play there. So we just stick people in corners. We roll, the big right there, and then we just play right there. And it gets really simple, for him. Where with Carson, it took him a little bit of time to understand how to manipulate the defense in terms of sprinting when he wasn't going to get it, things of that nature. So with Braden Smith and his ability to pass and Fletcher's ability to pass, now it kind of opens up things for me, like we did with Ryan Klein and Dakota Mathias for Fletcher. Even though he's got a little more size than those guys, a little more game, his ability to make intermediate shots, his ability to drive the ball, isn't like a lead or anything, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And he can shoot threes off the dribble. Braden Smith just gives you that quintessential point. And so like he can make threes off the dribble. He can break people down. He can get by people. And then he can spray the ball really well. So just trying to think about, we put a lot of time into what we run, but we also put a lot of time into ATOs and specials during games. And it's all suited right away. Like I sit on my recliner in front of my television and go through all post up specials and all lob specials for Zach. That's fun. Because you're getting the ball to somebody and it's a tough matchup for it. Now, where do you go after that? Before, you could always run a play for Vince Edwards to post up. You could always run a play for Sasha Stefanovic to come off those triple screens. You find their niche. You find out sometimes guys don't have 3 or 4 niches, right? So you find their niche, and that's what you want to find with each guy. But it's got to make sense. It's got to make sense. Do you feel like that's going to be for points per possession? If you ran that 30 times. That would pay off on a dividend there for you. You just got to get things figured out. We're not running things for everybody. And that's what gets lost. And that's what I always tell them in recruiting. If you're one of our top 2 or 3 dudes, it's going to be pretty fun for you. We're going to run some stuff for you. This is pretty cool. But if you're not, we're not running things for you. Then they kind of look at you and cross their eyebrows. And I'll be like, well, is the 7th man in your high school getting plays ran for him? They'll be like, well, no. Well, you're the 7th man here. I don't mean to hurt your feelings. Take that and understand that. I've had parents pick up the phone and say, well, you don't run anything for him. You got Caleb Swanigan down on the block. I'm going to run something for your kid? I'm getting Biggie Swanigan the ball on the block, man. Come on. And so, but you got to Dakota was great and Klein was great because you could run stuff for them. And then when they didn't have it, that ball still moved. So you don't want to run it for, you feel good. We got some guys I feel good about running stuff for. And if we get it, it's going to be fine. You're not always going to get it. So where do you maneuver when you don't get it? Now you got to have ball movement. You got to have a good post feeder. You got to whatever action you're going to get into, you got to get into it then at that point. Well, if the ball sticks in certain people's hands, now that makes me reluctant to run things for them that I just don't think are going to be wide open. So that's kind of what we go through in that process. And then, our number one failure last year, and you win 29 games, and I'm not saying the season's a failure, but our failure was our inability as a collective group to do their job. And I always talk to our players about this. If I'm asking you to do things and you're doing it to the best of your ability and it doesn't work, I got to change. But if I'm asking you to do something, I've been in the league for 23 years. I'm not going to ask you to do something that's not going to help us win. I'm not the greatest coach in the world, but I'm not a fool either. And so that's got to be the understanding. Sometimes they're really listening to you and really buying in. And then sometimes they're about halfway, because each guy's different. You get your feelings hurt. I'm not playing. I'm playing 10 minutes. No. So that piece of it, you got to do a good job of really communicating with your guys and understanding, because you need a full team to be successful to try to win a championship. So what we really have to do from a defensive standpoint is just stay connected and do our job. I think our competitive spirit has been really good as a team. 50-50 balls, loose balls, taking charges, diving on the floor. This group has been phenomenal in that area. I mean, phenomenal. Now can we as a group contain the dribble? Can we embrace the physicality of the game and not let somebody overpower us? Where are we laterally at getting, just keeping the ball in front of us? You can't just stay and help. And so like, I'm just excited about that, because I think anytime you high in those things that I just talked about, good things are going to happen, because I'm not in the business of taking bad basketball players.
Yeah, and in this play that we're showing here, obviously Edey finishes it with the easy slam, but that's why I appreciate Purdue fans, because they appreciate good hustle, and I think you've instilled that culture here. And on that was the biggest round of applause I got all day. Braden Smith misses a three, but he stays with it, and he's like crazed about trying to get the basketball and keeping his dribbler in front of him, and the fans recognized that and gave him a round of applause, a little golf clap for him. So I definitely can see, some of the staples in your foundation being built here. It's exciting. It's exciting to see what the new evolution of this team will become. Kraig, I know you got a couple more for him. Go ahead, fire away, my friend.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit on this already a little bit, but one of the things that I've been most impressed with as a fan is just your ability from the outside looking in to adapt to the players that you have.
Right.
I saw a stat the other day that I think 3 out of the last 5 years, you guys were top 5 in offensive efficiency. And that was with 3 teams that offensively did some things very differently. And from
Correct.
A team that was a bunch of post touches, a team that was a bunch of threes. And then last year, more pick and roll than I'd ever seen out of a Purdue offense, I think, with Jaden. Obviously, with Zach this year, I would assume that's a lot of post touches. But when Zach's out and Caleb's in, or
right,
maybe does that give a different look? His ability to pick and pop and shoot threes and that type of thing.
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff that we're getting through. With Caleb at a 5, Trey Kaufman at as posting up with Caleb, or Trey Kaufman's got a pretty good post up game. Caleb, even though he has struggled shooting here some, like when you watch him in practice and you watch him work and do stuff, it's very fluid. And I'm pretty confident. I mean, you still got to go and do it, but I think he's going to have a great season shooting the basketball. It just looks so good. Trey Kaufman now can get certain matchups and play out of the post a little bit. Mason is a guy has been a glue guy that can shoot the basketball and stretch the defense and really know what's going on. So yeah, kind of figuring out Travion came off the bench for us last year and we went to him a lot, playing half the game. It still doesn't mean that we can't run things. For those guys, looking for it and just kind of playing off their ability. We get a lot of practice in it because we have to do different things when Zach guards Caleb, in terms of switching, in terms of rotation if we're not switching. So we work on it a lot, and it gives us problems. And so, like, I think that piece of it, that to me is a real fun part about it, is when you have skilled guys, you can run a lot of stuff and you kind of know what works. Do they switch? Do they high hedge? Do they down on ice ball screens? Do they stay tight on pin downs? Do they switch pin downs? Can you play a slip game and get layups? Just all those things that come into play to really get you set up going into the game. No different than football. I love watching football when you're dealing with a good head coach, offensive coordinator making calls. You can see how he is probing the defense to lead up to something. And if they don't get some pressure on them, they're going to get their ways. With good teams, they get to where they're supposed to if they get some protection. And that's what we have to be able to do. We have to be able to handle pressure, handle different looks, schematically be able to attack things and recognize things. 90% when you go into games what they're going to do. Every now and then early in the season, or somebody will jump out and do something that they haven't been doing. I've always been excited about that, because if they're doing something they haven't been doing, there's no way they can be good at it, because you got to be able to practice to be good at things. So yeah, just trying to adapt and adjust. And the one team that you talked about, the start with was PJ Thompson and Dakota's senior year with Vance Isaac and Carson, and we're really balanced. Carson was an All-American that year. Vince Edwards and Isaac were all conference. Dakota Mathias should have been all conference. But then as we moved to the next year, we didn't have a low post player like Isaac. And I think we set the record for most threes taken and made in the Big Ten. And then this past year, obviously, we opened up things more for Jaden with his ability to break people down. And then we still threw the ball to see, when you throw the ball all the time to Zach and you throw the ball all the time to Travion and you open that thing up for Jaden Ivey, it's what I said earlier. You don't have there's not a lot of other things to go to at that point. You might be able to run a couple there, 2 or 3 for Sasha. But then after that, maybe we had 2 plays that we would run for Eric Hunter to turn the corner as a lefty and get places. That's about it. That's the game. You can't get to where you're running stuff for 8, 9 dudes. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Watching Jaden Ivey's evolution, I'm sure you wish you had him a couple more years, but some players are meant for not as much time. We saw you at the Pacers game and he gave you his jersey. I mean, how happy are you for him and his successes? And, I'm sure he's got more, mountains he's going to climb in the NBA.
Yeah, he's going to have a great career, with the opportunity that he has, even now with how young things go. There's guys out there that are lottery picks that are in the G League, guys not in rotations, guys taking a year, 2 years to get there, and sometimes not getting there and getting to where they were starting. He is starting for Detroit, from day one. They got a young core of guys. They got a very good coach in Dwayne Casey. So, my advice is to him, was just listen. Get with the veteran guard, listen to him. Get with your assistant coach, listen to him. Know what Dwayne Casey is saying. Don't nod your head when you don't know. Get in that film room, understand what's going on. They don't become Jaden Ivey. You become them. Understand that. And, just keep learning and keep working. But he's in a great opportunity, man. I've enjoyed watching him play. He was living on the floor other night with the Pacers. He probably fell 10 times. So I know he's going fast and he's trying to break people down. But, in that league, you got to earn your stripes. So he's just not going to drop to the ground. They're going to call stuff for him. So he's got to get to where if he can get to where he's an elite finisher, to go along what he's adding to his game, and know what's going on the defensive end, he could be one of the great ones.
Sure. Bobby, go ahead and fire away.
Coach, yeah, you talked about defensively last year. One of the big issues is just as a team, guys not necessarily doing their job all the time or doing what's instructed. As far as, I know you haven't played anyone else yet this year, but as far as what you've been seeing in practice, do you feel like defensively as a group, you have guys buying in a little bit better and guys doing their job and following their assignments? Yeah,
I think so, but we haven't played other people, so you haven't had those real tests. And you want to see, I thought we regressed the other night when we played in our scrimmage from our first scrimmage. I don't know if that was because of the fans, but our attention to detail wasn't great. And I don't, we're not in a position right now to have 2 great teams in practice. Sometimes people don't understand that. When you're in practice, both of those teams are yours. They play for you. And so sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can make it really competitive and balance your teams. And we're not at that point yet. You hope you can work towards that point, with that. But no, just trying to do our job. And I know it's kind of a corny thing that coaches say, but it's so true. Just sticking with things, doing our job, and then being quicker to the ball, embracing the physicality of the game, and getting to those 50-50 balls that I mentioned earlier. Those things are so important. I think we got a lot of guys that are hungry. And it's just, what's your mistake? If you're making a mistake trying to do what we're asking you to do, we're always living with that. Always living with that. But when you're not doing what you're supposed to and making those mistakes, especially if you've been around for a while, I have a tough time with that. And they know that. They know I have a tough time with that. So we go above and beyond to try to explain. I'm not someone who tells them this is what we're doing and just do it. This is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. I explain a lot of things that we're doing it to give them the understanding of the why, to be able to go out. So, hopefully that they buy into it and you're on the same page with them and you're empowering them. Now when they go out, they got to help others. They got to help others that are out there. That's like with our young guys, like sometimes they just don't know at times, but they're getting better and they're improving. And so we're excited about that.
Well, Coach, I don't know. You mentioned you had some other engagements. Obviously, you're a very busy man. Do you got time for one more? Or do you got to cut loose?
I got to leave at 11:20. So
yeah, no. Well, we can just skip it, honestly, Matt, because we appreciate your time and we don't want to overcook the chicken here, and we want to be able to bring you back on. We don't want to burn the bridge. One day we're gonna bug you again. We're obviously always at Mackey watching, and like I said, I always appreciate the way you coach. I think I've learned so much about the game here in the last 5 years, just watching you after every play. I always turn to what your reaction is, because you tell a lot in the story as far as what should have happened, because you're looking right at the guy that either is doing what he's supposed to do or isn't. I will reveal to you, Matt, quickly that I was the pseudo caller into the Bobby's already embarrassed. Into the Matt Painter show. I was Brian from Rensselaer that was crying about the left-right chant. And I swear to God, if these kids don't stop it, I am going to do something about this. It happened several times. So I'm going to do it. You say, the players got to do their job. The fans got to do their job too, Matt. And, these players are plotting against us. And I'm sick of it. You see Tyler Wall going to the bench. And they're telling him, you can see it on the telecast, man. I wanted to show you because you were like, do we have that? Look he's telling him right there, stay up. Jaden's at the free throw line. It's a 3-point game with 2 minutes to go. And they're chanting left, right. Like right now as the video's going on. And look, he's telling them, he's like, all right, stay, wait till he shoots. And then Jaden takes the shot and everybody else, sit down right when he shoots. And it infuriates me. Look at they're laughing it up. They think they're geniuses. And it drives me crazy. So as the fans in the stands, and that's what this show's all about, we're going to do our job here to help you. And I know they got to make their free throws. That's what you mentioned in your answer. But I just want you to know that we have your back here. I'm going to do everything I can. And that includes be a creepy caller into the Matt Painter show.
There you go. I appreciate you being the creepy.
All right.
Listening to the show, and I heard the call, and he's like, "This is Brian from Rensselaer." That's Braggs. I was like, "Oh my god."
Yeah. Well, like I said, I spent 5 years embarrassing Sasha. Now I embarrass Bobby and Kraig. I'll try my best not to embarrass you too much, Matt. But we appreciate your time here today. Best of luck on the season, and we look forward to seeing what this team's got, and maybe one day we can bring you on again.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Yes, sir. That's Matt Painter, breaking it down for us, and we appreciate all his time here today. So that was a lot of fun. Had to reveal to him who Brian in Rensselaer was. He has to know what he's up against here at Braggs on the Stands. But hey, I'm just trying to help. Bobby. Okay,
it's coming from a good place.
It's coming from a good place. These kids, and I know a lot of students are going to tune in to this show because they want to hear what the old ball coach has got to say. So, I'm just trying to give a little message to the paint crew. They do such a great job of organization. Nothing wrong with the left-right chant, but we got to organize it better, to make sure we're helping our team out. Matt says, hey, got to make the free throws anyway, and I agree with that. But at the same time, as fans, we got to do it. You want to be critical of the players, and believe me, Purdue fans are critical of the players. Then you need to be critical of yourself too. Look inward, right?
Braggs, you were talking about his expressions after plays, and he just got done talking about players listening to their coach, and you played like the quintessential expression of Matt Painter after a play not being done the way it was supposed to when Jaden hits that 3 against Ohio State and they just win the game, and you look at Painter and Painter's still throwing his hands up in the air like, you got to be kidding me. And I watched him watching that clip, and he was like, this is the clip you're going to show right after I talk about that.
Yeah, hey, it all looks like it works when it, the play's right when it works.
Yeah. Do you have his expression on here?
I might. I don't know.
I don't know. There's somewhere there's
Oh.
video and like you see his face just like.
Oh yeah,
he's got his like hands on his head.
Well, as the play's unfolding, he's like pointing to the two guys who are not running the play right. That's great.
Well, that's the great thing about Coach Painter is you learn a lot. Like I said, watching him, I wanted to get into, he mentioned Brandon Newman's in his 4th year, and I thought that was a really good point. Because he's only a junior, but he was redshirted, and he was a big storyline of last year. A lot of fans wanted him to play more, and he kind of struggled in different areas, and then once he got his opportunity at the very end of the season, he started to shine a little, which was a cool story. But it, definitely speaks to how Painter doesn't play favorites and wants you to do your job, as he mentioned, and then you're going to get more and more opportunities, and then playing within yourself, some of the things he was talking about. And I think Brandon's definitely, I've followed his career being here from the region in Crown Point, Indiana. Valparaiso is a couple towns over, and there are rival school in basketball, and I've watched Brandon play for 4 years now, or for 8 years now if you include his high school career, and he's uber talented, but obviously at Purdue there was some a learning curve, and so it was cool to see him kind of have his moment where he had to kind of take his turn on the bench, but then rise up, buy in, and how he locked in at the end, and it looked like he really started to buy into what Matt Painter was trying to teach him at the end of the season. And maybe halfway through, he might have had some internal doubts. I don't know. I'm just speaking from the body language and the look. And now he's a junior and has that opportunity to be a leader on this team. He gets very excited when he gets the ball. He wants to make a shot. And sometimes that can be a good thing and a bad thing. Like with Jaden Ivey right there. Did he run the right play? No, but he buried the 3 to win the game. Brandon Newman, he's one of those guys that'll pull the trigger, and that can be for better or worse, because one bad shot that goes in, okay, and then a few more bad shots and you start missing them, and you look over to Painter and he'll tell you all you need to know about that. So it'll be interesting to watch Brandon kind of fill into what his role is on this team. What do you think on that, Bobby?
Yeah, I think Brandon Newman, that's a good question, or good conversation to have about him. Is some of his shot selection issues that I think he did have last year. He's a guy who is a big time shooter. He's always looking to get those shots up, and it's for a reason. He's talented at doing that. But I think last year in that smaller role, Coach Painter has talked about a lot, that Brandon didn't really flourish in that diminished role last year. And I think part of those issues were, I think Brandon had a little bit of problems at times channeling in that shot selection, because he's such a talented shooter, and that's the best part of his game is shot making. And so I think he certainly is going to look to play through that a lot. But last year, I think in just a small amount of minutes he was getting, he felt that urge to utilize that shot making ability and try to make an impact in that fashion. And sometimes that resulted in some bad shots. And obviously, as you just said, Greg, like if you take a couple of bad shots and if they don't go in, that's going to get you on the bad side of the coach. And so hopefully this year, with increased opportunity, increased minutes, he'll just feel more comfortable, feel
like he doesn't have to take the shots because he'll have the minutes.
I don't got to take this shot here because I have a small crack, because I might have a better look next possession. I don't have to necessarily think that Jaden Ivey's coming in for me the next dead ball. So hopefully Brandon will play more comfortable, play more confident, and just take what the defense gives him more often this year than maybe he did last year at times.
Yeah, and I think certainly that's the case. And, we've seen over time, some players are really good at shot making when they get volume, and some aren't. And Carson was that dude. Like when Carson went to Boston and they said, take 5 shots a game, sit in the corner, he couldn't do it. Some guys have to have some volume. And I think Brandon's one of those guys of, if he comes in and shoots 4 or 5 threes, he may miss all 4 or 5 of them in any given game. But if he's putting up 10 or 12 shots a game, eventually his shot's too good. That stroke is too pure. he's going to make buckets. So I think the role is going to fit him a lot better this year. Didn't particularly shoot well in the scrimmage the other day, but really nobody as a team, we didn't shoot well from three in the scrimmage the other day all the way around. And as Painter said, there's a whole bunch of career 40% three-point guys on this team. So
Yep.
I have to think that small sample size isn't what he's seeing every day in practice, I hope, and isn't what we'll see, when they start playing games. Because you look at it on paper and you've got Zach in the middle, and literally everybody else on this team should be able to knock down open threes after him.
Yeah, 100%. And it helps because you have that anchor down there that's going to he's kind of like gravity. He's going to bring a lot of people to him, and then it's going to open up shooters. We talked a lot about Braden Smith, and he's obviously going to be a big talking point for Boilers fans because, like I said, he's electric. He's magnetic to watch and exciting. But we haven't really touched, and I feel like, enough on Fletcher Lawyer, who is an interesting player because, like I said, how many freshmen can play is going to be a big question. But, when Painter talked about their ability to pass the ball really opens things up for him, that tells me that these two guys are going to play a lot, and I think he's going to go through the growing pains, especially early on, maybe before Big Ten play, to see how much they can, adjust. And then playing in the Big Ten is going to be another step of adjustment with the physicality. That was another question I was hoping to ask Coach Painter. So I'll ask you this, Bobby, being the color analyst of Purdue men's basketball radio and a former player that understands what it takes to adjust to that, how much early expectations should we have for Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer with the talent they have, or do we need to be careful about getting too excited too early and then getting frustrated when they have growing pains that come with Big Ten play?
I think you should have high expectations for those guys. I mean, they're really talented dudes. Mr. Basketball in the state of Indiana, Braden Smith, and then second, Fletcher Lawyer. I think those guys deserve to have high expectations. Will they have growing pains? Yes, of course, but I think their talent level and maturity level, just as far as the way they play the game, deserves to have high expectations. I know the coaching staff is going to play those guys a lot of minutes, and I think the coaching staff trusts those guys to make the right decisions more often than not. And that they're both, as Coach talked about, both really talented guys offensively as far as having that three-level scoring. They can both make shots off the bounce from distance, can score in the mid-range, and then can get take the ball to the rim. Braden a little bit probably more talented at getting the ball to the rim than Fletcher, but Fletcher is such a dynamic shooter. Being able to play off that shot fake is going to get defenders in the air, and that is going to give him creases to get to the rim. And I think he does have a little bit more ball handling ability than some of those other shooters before him, as far as being able to get creative and get to the rim and be able, and if he doesn't get all the way to the rim, use that floater or mid-range game. So I'm really excited to see those guys. There's been plenty of freshmen before them that have come on and had big time seasons. And I think at the guard position, more than on the inside, you can get away with not being as physically developed. A guy like, Braden's got a pretty good body to him. He's only going to get bigger and stronger, obviously. But, Fletcher certainly got some room to improve from a physicality standpoint. But when you're playing on the perimeter, those issues don't rear their ugly head nearly as much because you don't have to be super strong to be able to make a three-pointer. So that's not going to be an issue for Fletch. He's going to be able to make all kinds of threes from long distance. And since he's not going to be banging down low nearly as much as a post player would, that's not going to be a deficiency that rears its ugly head nearly as much as some guy who is maybe going to play inside.
Yeah, and big picture, it's exciting to have those two start at the exact same time. Cam Hyde, I also think, he had a few threes he made. Coach Painter said he's behind because of some injuries and stuff, but a guy that looks like he can splash, at times. And then you also have TKR, Trey Kaufman-Wren, another player that's a big that can shoot, and starting his now a redshirted freshman but a guy that has talent inside and out and could be a hell of a mismatch for certain opponents. Big picture for those guys in that group as they grow, they can be very dangerous going forward. So it'll just be interesting to see for this year how fast they can adjust. And, you know, we'll have all season to cover this and talk about it. You know, I don't know if there's any other points you guys want to make. You two actually have to work today. I got rained out, you know, so I'm just chilling at home. So
yeah,
I'll leave it to you two if you've got a couple final points and want to wrap things up. And we've got plenty of shows going forward where we can talk about, you know, the season and expectations and things like that.
Well, you know, you said we've talked about Braden Smith enough, and I'm not quite sure we have. You know, last year at this time, he was ranked 256 on 247 composite. And if that's a 256 ranked player, there's something wrong with the ranking system and I think in the 247 on its own, he's up to like in the 80s now, about where Carson was when he came in. But, you know, hype started to build on him when they started to practice. We started to hear it from a few different places, and seeing that him play in scrimmage, I think that hype is justified. I think it's real. And in a lot of ways, I mean, the team's going to run through Zach, but I think in a lot of ways, however quickly Braden can adjust and perform at a high level in Big Ten play this year is going to be how the team goes, because he's the one true creator on that team. From watching the scrimmage anyway. Bob, you can correct me if you don't think I'm right, but I think he's the one true creator to get other people shots. And to me, he's the one person that has a second move, a third move off the bounce, off the dribble, to be able to create his own shot at end of shot clock situations, those type of things. So I not to put too much on his shoulders, but he looks like he's a guy that's going to be ready for the moment. I think that's going to tell a lot about how successful this team can be, because everybody else around Zach can knock down threes. So if he can break down defenses and spot up guys for open threes, and we can feed Zach and he can run the offense efficiently, then, you know, this team maybe surprises us and does better than what a lot of expectations are for this team coming into the season. The other thing I'll say, the thing that surprised me the most, because I'd already heard the hype on Braden, man, I thought Cam Heide looked really smooth. Like that kid is he's just got a smooth, effortless game. He's got some bounce to him. You know, he said he'd been injured quite a bit, and that shocks me a little bit, because he said today that Berg was going to redshirt. And if you'd asked me a month ago, I would have assumed that Heide would too, just with kind of backlog. But he was playing the three in scrimmage the other day quite a bit. And, man, he looks smooth. So I don't know. What do you think of him, Bobby?
Yeah, he did look smooth. I like his potential for sure. He's got a nice, smooth-looking jumper, very bouncy, made some impressive rebounds where he elevated in traffic, and I think he's going to be great as far as being able to finish in transition, running the wing. Made some good decisions, too. There was a clip there where he had a nice drive, found Ethan back cutting towards the rim. So I think his potential as a player is great. Yeah, coach didn't say whether he'd redshirt or not. I think, you know, there's probably a good chance he will redshirt as well, just because, you know, he would probably be that 10th man no matter what.
Right.
And I don't, you know, even if he was able to say beat out a Brian Waddell, he would probably be that 10th man. And I don't know if you want to waste the guy eligibility if he's only going to be playing, you know, very small amount of minutes per game. And I know they're high on Brian Waddell as well. And Brian's had some injuries, as coach mentioned. So I would think if that's close, which I presume it probably is, they probably would lean towards redshirting Cam and letting Brian grab any of those 10th man minutes at the 3 spot that might be available, just because you'd like to maintain that player's eligibility if they're not going to be asked to play a substantial.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it time and again with players here recently. Obviously, Sasha was a great benefactor to being redshirted. Look at then what his role became as a senior and a leader. Same with Brandon Newman, gets redshirted. If he hadn't, this would be his last shot. He'd be a senior. Now he's only a junior, and gets 2 years to really, fill out his role on this team as a leader and a starter or a guy that plays heavy minutes, TKR, I think, will be a good benefactor of that. I mean, a guy that didn't benefit from it, that probably, and I know for a fact, he'd probably be the first one to tell you because he said it to me at the Big Ten tournament last year. I was sitting with Ryan Klein for a game, and he was like, "Oh man, I wish I had redshirted because then I would have been able to have that extra year to just go crazy on people." And he's like, by the time I was a senior, I was, I could have been so much. And he talked about, with Painter saying some different things in his game. He added the fadeaway at the end. And he's like, I wish I had been doing that earlier. He's like, had I been redshirted, then I would have had that in my arsenal for a whole nother year. So redshirting, sounds bad at first. And the players, I think their initial instinct is to be disappointed. But then after a while, you start to understand how much it can benefit your personal career and the benefit of the team as well.
Yeah. The other thing, too, I thought Fletcher had a lot more dribble drive game than I thought he would, attacking the rim. And he had 2 or 3 really nice takes, got real aggressive in that third session. Thought him and Braden played really well off of each other in that third session. But, I mean, he attacked a few times. And, he compared him to Dakota and to Ryan maybe. Maybe you could compare him to Sasha a little bit. But I think all 3 of those guys eventually develop that. But I think as a freshman, he's got more of that game than any of those 3 guys did coming in.
Listen, if we're going to try to sneak any kind of Sasha, even the slightest Sasha slander,
that was not slander. I said he got it before
I'm kidding.
Left,
I'm kidding.
For Pete's sakes, man.
No, I'm sensitive.
I would never slander the double nickel assassin.
The double nickel assassin. I probably don't be able to say that on the air.
Yeah, no, no, I'm kidding. Wait, what?
I'm bummed I won't be able to use that double nickel assassin nickname anymore on the air this year.
Yeah.
You got any good nicknames for these freshmen yet?
Not yet. I'm gonna have to think of some others. Have to come naturally.
Yeah, it's funny watching Sash play in Greece. I've watched a few games online, and the environments. It's like going to a soccer game. They like sing and chant like throughout the whole game. The fans do, and it's just. I know it's probably a fun experience for him, and obviously Greece, not too bad of a destination to play pro ball at. So, like I said, we have a long season to go. This has been, a fun start to this season with head coach Matt Painter coming on. Certainly learn a lot every time you talk to him. Very detailed in his responses. I know we had a lot more other questions to throw at him. We wanted to talk some NIL and different things, but didn't want to burden him with too much time. We had our buddy Greg McManus. He said on Twitter, he goes, "All right, coach, we value your time. And also here's about this left-right chant." I couldn't help myself. I go, Bobby and Kraig were real thrilled about that.
I needed you to tell Painter that you called in with a fake name to the show. He needed to know that.
Yeah, he knew I was crazy, but now it's confirmed. I mean, here was the audio.
We have our first caller of the night, 888-246-2678 is our number. And Brian, I believe, is calling in from Rensselaer. Brian, is that where you are?
Didn't even use the right
whether
time.
It is or not, what's your question?
Yes, sir.
Brian from Rensselaer.
Dude, people from Rensselaer don't have Southern accents, Braggs. I've got lots of friends there, but actually one that's listening. Right now. They don't have Southern twang.
Yeah, I don't know why that town came to my head, but it did.
I laughed so hard. I was like, "This is Braggs," and then you went on the left-right thing, and I was like, "Oh, come on, Braggs."
It's serious. God, you guys, every game that it proves me right, and you still guys won't buy into this. It just pisses me off. That's okay.
Hey, defensively, this team is going to be better. I'm sold on that. I don't think there's weak links. I think it's a real cohesive unit that can all D up.
I think they should be substantially improved on the defensive end. Just not to put any Sasha slander out there, but I think of the guys that graduated last year or left, I don't, not necessarily I don't think defense was necessarily the strength of those guys. Those guys were all great players, but probably more offensive oriented guys than they were defensive. So even though we may as a team lose some of that offensive firepower, I think we can hopefully make up for it with some better defensive play, not only individually, but as a team. And just because you're going to have it, when we saw in the scrimmage, we're going to have games probably this year where we don't shoot it great from three. I think this team is going to play through Zach a lot, probably Braden Smith ball screen action. And then I think you're going to have just a bunch of threes being put up by the rest of the guys on the team. And so there'll be days where those don't necessarily go in at the highest level. So hopefully some improved defense, getting to the foul line through the bonus with Zach, and then some interior play with Zach, hopefully, and maybe even Trey Kaufman around. Hopefully that can keep you in games. So maybe you're able to pull some games out, low scoring games with your defense. And I think we will be better defensively. So,
well, that was kind of what I was alluding to with Coach was, you had the super, because he mentioned it, like, the biggest problem with last year's team was, playing together and buying in at times. It was like sometimes it was halfway. And I mentioned, sometimes you want those younger guys because they're going to listen to everything you say. And I feel like this team is going to embody that. They may not be as talented as last year's team, but maybe for a lot of fans who were very frustrated, as much as that team, they were in the top 10 all year, which is like one of the only 2 times they've ever done that. Or I think maybe the only time, or they've done it only one other time, been in the top 10 all year, number 1 in the country for the first time ever in program history. As exciting as that was, there was a lot of frustration with fans throughout the year and very few losses. This team might have more losses, and I think fans are going to probably appreciate this team a little more, maybe because expectations aren't as high, and with expectations comes disappointment and bigger letdowns, but also, because they aren't this, NBA type, superstars with different, mindsets, and they're going to play more as one potentially. I think there's going to be fans that are going to really appreciate this team. Maybe even go ahead, Kraig.
So do you want to take any Sasha slander? I will take no NBA star alluding to slander.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's the point, right? It's the catch-22. You want NBA talent, but any college team is going to want it for that, like you said, in the isolation, who's going to be the guy that can score when they're locking you up and break guys off the dribble? They may not have that guy this year, so it's going to have to be more teamwork. But at the same time, when you don't have that guy on the team, I think there is more organization, consistency to that organization on both ends of the floor. Guys aren't going rogue as much. And so then the consistency turns into something that becomes a well-oiled machine potentially. So, I understand you want the NBA talent at all times, but especially with the way Matt Painter coaches and runs his team defensively and offensively, sometimes I think the underdogs, the guys that, play together all the time, may be better suited for him. You're not going to pass on NBA talent though, ever, obviously. So we've reached the point of the show where I start rambling. So if you guys,
as Jay Billis would say, I got to go to work. So.
Got to go to work. Hey, and I got to go get lunch at some point. Bobby, you got any final thoughts for us?
No, I think that sums it up pretty much.
Talk about how much you missed us.
Yes, missed you guys so much. It was so fun getting back, reviewing the season.
I got to embarrass you. First show out the gate, I got to embarrass you a little bit. So that's good. That's good.
Because you guys at the scrimmage.
Hey, it was good to get the more full in-depth story from Kramer too, by the way.
Yeah, that's I'm glad we got that off air.
We won't bring it up. We won't bring it up on air.
Man, I meant to bring that up with Painter too.
No.
And then we had this picture with Painter. I didn't bring that up.
Yeah.
We didn't have time. It's okay. We're not going to completely embarrass Bobby because then he'll stop coming on.
Yeah.
But that there's always a stalking video potentially coming to a Mackey Arena near you. So at any moment,
I'm expecting a big improvement by my Cubbies this coming summer. So I'm going to be hitting you up for some tickets.
That's the other thing. I meant to bring up the Cubs to Matt, but with as detailed as his questions are, he probably would have went 15 minutes on the Cubs. So
yeah, even the 40-man roster decisions this summer are really big.
Yeah, so we'll save the pleasantries for later. But all right, so that wraps things up here for today. We'll just sign off with the peeps we got here. Thank you again for everybody that tuned in. We had a pretty large live crowd, and for those that are going to watch later on, just continue to stay tuned all season long. Kraig and I will be doing shows quite a bit, maybe even some instant live post-game shows as games wrap up when we are available. And as I said, I'm doing Bears coverage with CHGO, so kind of got to bob and weave between the two coverages, but we're going to do our Bears.
We've got quite a few current players locked up to come on the show this year.
Yep. We did a lot of muscle work at the scrimmage, talking to some players about coming on. So some more really special guests to come. Bobby, obviously, is always our favorite guest when it comes to Purdue sports. So thank you again, Bobby. And again, stay tuned all season long, fans. And thank you again for tuning in. For Kraig Bowers from Boiler Die Hard and Bobby Riddell of Purdue Men's Basketball Radio, I'm Greg Braggs Jr., and this is Braggs in the Stands.